On paper, this looks like a foregone conclusion. At the 2026 U.S. Figure Skating Championship,
That's the sanitized headline. But for anyone glued to the ice on the night of January 10th in St. Louis, calling it a win is an insult. This didn't feel like a victory lap. It felt like a riot. Title number 7, their 5th consecutive crown. A milestone that officially vaults them past legends Meryl Davis and Charlie White for the most ice dance championships in American history. Yet as the final haunting notes faded into a deafening standing ovation, Madison Chock didn't look triumphant. She looked shell-shocked. She turned to Evan eyes wide and mouthed a single word: surreal. At 33 and 36, physics says they shouldn't be getting faster. They shouldn't be crushing personal bests. And they definitely shouldn't be the most intimidating predators in the entire sport. But heading toward the Milano Cortina Olympics as the oldest US skaters in a century, Chock and Bates are doing the unthinkable. They are hitting their absolute prime exactly when the world expected them to fade away. If you think title number 7 was just about a stat sheet wake-up, this was a warning shot. For over a decade, the 6th title record held by Davis and White was the untouchable gold standard. It was the benchmark of consistency that defined the modern era of American skating. In January 2026, Chock and Bates didn't just meet that bar, they smashed right through it. Final score, a staggering 228.87. The real story, though, is in the math. In the free dance alone, they posted 137.17. That number was fueled by a monster 77.89 technical mark. To put that in perspective, that's a score usually reserved for 20-year-olds with fresh knees and infinite energy. For a team in their 15th season to put up those numbers is a glitch in the matrix. But their dominance isn't just about the points total. It's about the margin. They finished 15 points clear of silver. In ice dance, where gold is often decided by a fraction of a hair, a 15-point lead isn't a victory. It's a massacre. Evan Bates dropped the media polish afterward for some raw honesty, reminding everyone their path wasn't a straight line. He brought up the 5-year drought between their first title in 2015 and their second in 2020. Most teams fracture during that kind of wilderness. They watch the young stars and the new flavors of the month rise up and accept that their time is done. Chock and Bates flipped the script. They used those 1,800 days in the dark to rebuild their engine. They realized to survive 15 years in this brutal game, they couldn't just be skaters. They had to be survivors. If their 2025 routine was a party, their 2026 painted black free dance is a brawl. Set to the visceral orchestral version of the Rolling Stones hit from the Westworld soundtrack, it's a dark brooding collision of Flamenco and Paso Doble. And they torched the rulebook. Madison isn't the delicate flower being guided around the ice. She is the matador. Evan Bates isn't just the partner, he is the bull. Crafted with Spanish maestro Antonio Najarro, the choreography is razor-wire tight. It builds tension for 4 minutes without ever letting you breathe. From the opening curve lift, which grabbed a massive 15.70 points to the final steps, every movement is a deliberate middle finger to the safe veteran route. Most teams at this stage drift toward nostalgic tracks. They play to the judges' love of classical romance. They skate like they're protecting a legacy. Chock and Bates skate like they want to burn that legacy down and build a fortress in the ashes. When Madison whips her skirt like a cape in the dying seconds, it's not a gimmick. It's a declaration of power. In an Olympic season where rivals are terrified of making mistakes, these two are the only ones taking a massive artistic gamble. They aren't just competing for points, they're directing a cinematic masterpiece on the ice. There is a biological reason ice dancers usually hang up the skates before 30. The microscopic precision needed for world-class lifts destroys the body. When you've been a team for 15 years, your joints carry the literal weight of those thousands of hours. But for Chock and Bates, that scar tissue is their superpower. In St. Louis, they nailed 7 level 4 elements. Every single move scored a grade of execution of 2.25 or higher. That is refined perfection. It's a symmetry you can only forge through a decade and a half of shared muscle memory. They don't need to look to know where the other stands. They are grounded, connected, and present in a way that the rest of the field simply can't touch. Young guns like the rising Emilia Zingis and Vadim Kolesnik are hungry, but they can't replicate that kind of tenure just yet. Greatness, however, comes with a receipt. Evan Bates admits he is fighting to keep the floodgates closed, but the weight of this 15-year odyssey is hitting hard. They are the final survivors of a golden era. They serve as the living link between the Meryl Davis dynasty and the sport's unwritten future. The entire legacy of American ice dance now rests squarely on their spines. And rather than collapsing under the pressure, they are using that heavy burden to dig their blades deeper into the ice. They glide stride for stride, carrying the hopes of every single person who lifted them toward the rafters of that arena. In June 2024, Madison and Evan finally tied the knot. While the fans swooned over the storybook romance, the rest of the skating world narrowed its eyes. History says that when a duo exchanges vows, the competitive killer instinct begins to fade. The partnership feels too safe. The life goals are checked off, and suddenly the brutal grind of the Grand Prix circuit loses its shine. But for Chock and Bates, marriage didn't settle them down. It set them free. In the lead up to 2026, the word sacrifice hasn't even crossed their lips. They talk about gratitude. When Madison speaks about soaking up the crowd's love, she sounds like a veteran who knows the clock is ticking and refuses to waste a single heartbeat. They are sharpening their skills at the Ice Academy of Montreal, the undisputed lion's den of the sport. Even surrounded by the world's elite, they are the undeniable captains of the ship. That shared blood bond has built a fortress around their minds. They don't fear the stumble, they don't fear the judges. They have each other, and that is enough. When you strip away the fear of losing, you unleash a monster on the ice. You get a team that can rock out to Lenny Kravitz with a swagger so heavy it makes the rest of the field look like they are trying too hard. You get a powerhouse that turns a competition into a coronation before the music even stops. The hourglass has been flipped. When the US Olympic roster dropped on January 11th, Chock and Bates were the headline act. They are marching toward Italy as the gold medal favourites, a position they have never held before. The underdog days are dead. In 2014, they were 8th. In 2018, 9th. In 2022, 4th, the most gut-wrenching spot in sports. That 4th place finish in Beijing is the jet fuel powering this entire 2026 campaign. They stood on the podium as a team, but their necks remained bare of individual hardware. They watched from the sidelines as the Russian doping scandal put their moment on ice for 2 long years. They felt the sting of a win that didn't feel like winning. Milan is their shot to rewrite the ending. They enter the games as reigning 3-time world champions, riding a 13-competition winning streak. Domestically, they are untouchable. But the true battle now is the one inside their own heads. As the elder statesmen of the squad, they must manage bodies that demand recovery and minds that are magnetizing toward the finish line. Evan's talk about building steam for Milan isn't just media fluff. It is a calculated strike. They're barreling toward February 6th and they refuse to veer off course. But victory in 2026 isn't just about gold. For Madison Chock and Evan Bates, the real triumph already happened in St. Louis. That 7th title wasn't just a statistic. It was a loud declaration to the next generation that a career ends when you say it ends. They proved you can be 15 years deep into a partnership and still have fresh ink for the story. You can be a married couple in your mid-30s and still outwork the teenagers. You can be the architect of your own destiny. In a game that loves to tell athletes their time is up, Chock and Bates are the ones gripping the pen. When they take the ice in Italy for the curtain call, the score will matter. Medals always count, but their legend is already cast in bronze. They stand as the most decorated ice dance team the United States has ever produced. Not because they were the freshest or the fastest, but because they were the survivors. They outlasted the droughts. They outlasted the heartbreak. And they stayed in the fight until they became a benchmark that might never be touched again. 6 months from now, when the records collect dust and the scores fade from memory, this January night will resonate because it marks the moment 2 Titans realized the ultimate power move isn't holding on tighter, it is letting go. And in 2026, Madison Chock and Evan Bates are letting go straight into the history books.